Welcome to our listening audience and a big welcome to our discussion panel this afternoon here in Sydney, following on from the business show, which took place in November here in Sydney as well, where we ran a series of discussion panels. And this second topic that we addressed during that particular business show is what are the implications of implementing generative AI on the social system of organizations. It's a big topic, and to help us wrestle with that topic, I would like to introduce you all to Natalia Salzberg from Headway Group. G'day, Natalia. To Mike Kirch from Fixture Digital here in Sydney as well. G'day, Mike. Hello. And of course to Radan Kuzarek from ACMP ANZ. How are you, my friend?
I'm well, thank you. Good afternoon. Hi, everyone.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to get our screen sharing happening for us. Just to clarify again, the topic of our discussion panel this afternoon is what are the implications of implementing Gen AI in respect of the social system of organizations. Every organization is a socio-technical system. It brings human beings together for a purpose, and it brings technologies, it brings assets, resources. It brings the non-human world into contact with the human world to deliver something of value to a marketplace, to a community, etc. Okay, so to a country, and so on. And so today, that's the topic we're going to address, and we're going to set this up as some brief, sort of challenging thoughts and ideas from each of our presenters here, including myself. I'll get us underway in just a moment, and then I'm going to hand over to Natalia. She's going to share some of her thoughts about this topic, then Radan, and then finally Mike. And once we've done this sort of 7 to 10 minutes presenting a few thoughts and ideas, we'll come together then as a final group, as a discussion panel. We'll see how it goes, 10 to 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, and we're going to dig a little deeper into those thoughts that we've shared, have a bit of a chat about what that might mean and our own respective experiences working in enterprises, not only in this country, but around the world as well. Okay, so that's the approach today. So let me get this underway. My view is going to be covered by just two compelling substantive thoughts. And it's this notion of connection and relation between human, let's call us the organic aspect of this world, this new world we're encountering, this complexity that now is bringing both generative AI and agentic AI into our workplaces, and the inorganic or the non-human systems. What's the possibility? Is it possible for us to coexist? Is it possible for us to actually integrate our collective efforts? Or will we stand separate from one another going forward? These are really important organizational design and organizational sustainability type questions. These are systemic questions. We're introducing into the system of an organization, not just algorithmic programming, the stuff that we used to do last century, I can use that expression, but what we've become well known for this century, the early parts of the 2000s, but in the last 5 years or so, certainly generative AI, and well known for the skills that we acquired in prompt engineering and based on large language models, moving rapidly towards other models, world models and so forth, where fundamentally we are starting to head toward independent decision-making, predictability and so forth, predicting what our wants and needs and responses might be, and then of course not only anticipating them, but then responding to that and to that interpretation of our needs with agentic AI. So that's where we're going right now. So what is the possibility? Okay, so let me have a look at this with you. I want to share with you a body of work, a good friend, teacher, and mentor. I've been working with Jim for 20 odd years, a remarkable human being, and this is his latest book, You and We, built out of the work of originally a very significant philosopher from the 1930s, let's say, Martin Buber, subsequently the work of Dr. Terry Warner and the Arbinger Institute, where Jim operated for quite a number of years, and of course now in his own company, which is called Withy in the United States. And Jim has just written his latest book, which is a wonderful Christmas time. Can I encourage you to read this at Christmas time? If you've got something, if you're looking for something to really explore and get your teeth into, this is a brilliant read. It's also fundamentally a great description of how organisations both function and indeed on a daily basis fail to function. And not just the corporate world, the world of our community, the world of our families, and the world of human relation between people. It's a really powerful story, but there's a lot of learning in the story. And I do believe strongly this represents a new standard in organisational design for the 21st century. Now, here are some challenging thoughts. Jim proposes in You and We the laws of relation. And the first one is that everything we see is relation. You and I, the four of us sitting here, the people listening to this, everything that happens on a daily basis emerges out of relation. Everything is built by relation. And Jim uses a couple of very powerful metaphors. The classic that I love is the marriage, if you will, the coming together, the collision, the cohesion of oxygen and hydrogen in a particular relation that delivers life-giving water. Well done, Mike. I couldn't have asked you to have done that with better timing, my friend.
Perfect.
So this notion that two gaseous elements are transformed into a life-giving liquid called water is remarkable. Now, metaphorically, what does that look like in your organisation as you step into your change strategy, as you step into so-called transformation in your organisation? Is it genuinely transformation of that nature? Or is it something, nothing, or is it little more than managed change, controlled change? Adaptation, sure. Is it transformation, truly? Everything is built by relation. How we interact with each other is who we are. And then finally, we progress by uniting. Powerful laws of relation. And of course, this is taught in the book through the storyline, the interplay of the characters in the fiction. They learn these lessons. And there are others, the 5 levels of relation. Now, I'm raising these ones with you to stimulate our thinking. So this is established between human beings. Do we obstruct one another? Do we resist one another? When we come to a workplace, have you ever, Mike, Natalia, Radan, have you ever experienced resistance in an organisational setting? What about a family setting? Do we resist one another? Of course we do, Natalia. I mean, that is normal human behaviour. It's explainable. It's not very healthy. It's not particularly wonderful, and yet we do it. Why do we do this is a fair question. And there's lots to be said about that. We haven't got the time here today, but do we coexist? Do we add, if you want to use the simple arithmetic for want of a better term? Do we add? Is that the function by coming together? Do we add to one another's lives? Do we genuinely collaborate? Think about the word collaboration in the context of a cross-functional change delivery team, Radan. Do we truly multiply each other's efforts? Do we actually genuinely collaborate? And in that process, do we account for the impact we have in each other's lives throughout that siloed, functional, even cross-functional organisational initiative or strategy? The next one is compounding. Is there genuine compounding taking place in our relations? Are we genuinely integrating you and I, you and we, to use Jim's expression? Okay, so here's the challenging piece. I read this quite a few months back before it was published globally, and I said, Jim, this is outstanding. It's exceptional work. But here's the challenge. And the challenge is, where does artificial intelligence fit into this? That's the big question for me. Where does artificial intelligence, in all its forms and evolutionary futures, where does that fit in? Are we simply coexisting with AI? Because it feels like that at the moment. I feel as though maybe we're coexisting. For some people, they're choosing to resist it. In other cases, I've yet to see it, they're genuinely collaborating. I doubt we'll ever see the level of integration we're talking about here in terms of humans. I was just working with a group a few moments ago before we stepped into this discussion panel, this webinar, and we were talking about love in action in the social system. What does love in action look like in your family? What's the language of love in your enterprise? Now, take on board AI. What would that look like? How might that manifest at these two top levels of collaboration, integration, multiplication, compounding? Moving on. So we can actually measure the relational field across a human social system. We've yet to work out how to do that in respect of including AI. And yet that's an interesting proposition in itself. Let me move now to why we do what we do, whether we resist AI or we embrace it in one form or another. And I want to go to another wonderful group of teachers that I've had the privilege to work with for the last 25 years. And I'll call out Joseph Grenny and all of our good friends at Crucial Learning in, again, the US. And this book that was absolutely brilliantly released in 2008, I think, in its original edition, but it's in its third edition now, as you can see here, called Crucial Influence, previously known as Influencer, brought the very, very best that research and practice could bring from the social and the behavioural sciences together, and fundamentally presented us with a whole range of, and I'm just giving you a very, very quick view of this. Feel free to read the book, right? Either book. Great reading. And my practice over the last 15 years in this particular domain is deeply, deeply effective in organisations who are transitioning through change from a current state to future state for whatever the purposes. But these 6 sources of influence are why we do what we do, why we choose to resist or we choose to embrace each other, never mind that non-human aspect of our new lives called AI. So I'm going to do this really quickly. You can read the screen, but essentially we do what we do for 2 reasons, because we want to and we can. So the question is AI wanting to and able to do something? Gen AI versus agentic AI, we can ponder that, right? And that's what I'm going to let my learned friends here explore that a little bit further. Personal, social, and structural influences are interesting. Those 3 domains of influence in the pursuit of an important, one might question, mutually valued or aligned goal, result, outcome, or impact. So here's the distinction I want to make. It goes like this. These are the human elements of influence. I'm sure you can work that one out. It's not too hard. But here are the non-human ones. These are not human in nature. These are, number 5 is the economic influence of reward and penalty or punishment. Right? And source 6 in this model from our friends at, Joseph and his friends at Crucial Learning says, here are the structural enablers. So here's the proposition that I want to put before you, and I'm about to finish off on this. Where do you think AI fits? Well, in this particular body of knowledge practice, if you will, the underpinning data and science of the last 30, 40 years, AI is nothing more than a tool, an information-based tool that sits in source 6, a structural enabler. That's how it sits at this moment. So any ERP, CRM, any of these information systems are squarely one source of influence over our human behaviour, source 6. Is AI there, or at some point in the future, does it absolutely find its way somewhere else on this diagram? And I want to leave you with that challenging thought, the possibility, as I said at the outset, and I'm wondering, where you think, as you listen to this and about to listen to our friends here, where you think AI is, could be, should be, the possibilities for the future. All right, well, with that said, I want to now hand over to my good friend here, Natalia Salzberg from Headway Group. Over to you, Natalia. Share with us your provocative thoughts.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for the intro. I'm Natalia. In my work at Headway, I look at how systems design and emerging technologies like Gen AI change the way people work. So that's the angle I'll be taking today. Most of us are now using tools like ChatGPT or Claude or many of the others to help with email, writing, preparing content, responding to routine customer inquiries, and even write code. But is this adoption actually making an impact to the bottom line? If you look at the research, that's not what it's showing. We're currently seeing that about 70 to 85% of AI initiatives are not translating to significant business value. 70 to 85%. You might assume that that means the technology isn't quite working. And that could be a fair assumption. But the research actually finds that it's more about how people work with the technology and how they work with each other while using the technology that's actually making a real difference. Can I have my first slide, please? So I'd like to talk about the changing shape of organizations. If you think about the traditional organizations, they look a little bit like a Christmas tree in the left. A broad base where most of the work is done, the process work, the routine tasks, and there's where you have typically larger teams. And as you go up the hierarchy, the number of people becomes smaller because the work becomes more complex. As we deploy these tools, they're able to do more and more of the repetitive tasks, and the shape of the organization starts to become thinner at the base. And what's interesting about that is that it shows that the nature of work is changing, not just the tools themselves. So how do we make sure that as the work changes, we can actually derive business value? How do we help the people in our organization solve the problems we need them to solve? When the work changes, the social system needs to adapt. Otherwise, people just end up scrambling. Who do they talk to? How decisions are made? Where judgment sits? All of that changes too. If you think about work in terms of problem complexity, it becomes a little bit clearer. Can I have the next slide, please? So this diagram shows how we measure problem complexity at Headway. On the left-hand side, you have the more everyday problems, the process work, the expertise work, the look it up and tell the customer work. Then as you move towards the right, the problems become more complex and the things that haven't been solved before, where you need ideas, ingenuity, context, judgment. That's what we're seeing. What we're seeing now is that AI can reliably take care of those first five, those routine and structured pieces of work, whereas as humans, we shine on the right-hand side. So earlier in the business show, Brad talked about a Formula One example, and where he talked about the 1.8-second pit stop, which was astounding. I'm sure he'll show you a little bit about that afterwards. The question then becomes, how do we help our organizations run that smoothly? How do we get our own version of that 1.8-second capability? And it's really about investing in our people. Not just the people who are AI curious, but the people who can actually use these tools to move the dial and then add the context and the judgments that the tools don't have. People who can look at what the system produces and actually understand what it means, see new ways through a problem, and effectively become the supervisors of that AI work. And that's what we need to invest in as businesses. We need to make sure that our people who can work at the more complex end of the spectrum, where judgment and context and creativity make all the difference. So if you're wondering where to start small. Look at where your people are spending their time today. Look at what they're doing. If you can find even just one repetitive task and reinvest that time into something higher value that requires the creativity, the judgment and context, you're already helping them move into the parts of the spectrum where the human capability translates into business value. And once people understand where they fit in the human plus AI world, that's when you start to see the returns. That's my contribution.
Beautiful. Thank you so much,
Brad.
Natalia. I've got a couple of challenging questions for you for later.
Oh, great.
So
Looking forward to that.
hang in there. Okay.
Will do.
Thank you very, very much.